So today on the pod, we're going deep into coaching. We're talking about this Life Tetris analogy. And one of the really fun things about this analogy is I feel like it will help you navigate your training of your clients a lot better. And so I'm going to go into the analogy, which actually the terminology came from Len. I'll credit where credit's due. And then I have an example that I think illustrates it really, really well too. So you'll be able to see the actual thing, the actual Life Tetris coaching principle play out in real time far before I ever had a term for it, but for my own training business. So I'll start with a story from what a friend told me a couple of years back. And this person was the first ever personal trainer for a bariatric fitness program in Canada. So it was a governmentally funded bariatric fitness program. Basically, it was the first ever governmentally funded weight loss program that included fitness for obese men and women. And they defined obese as having a BMI of 40 plus. So just for context, I'm 5'4". I'd have to weigh 240 pounds to qualify for this program, which basically means I'd be a bowling ball. And one of the things that he told me, yeah, you just roll me down the hill. Can you picture that, Amber?
Yes, so clearly. That brought me so much joy.
I'm picturing the face from the launch week on the OTM enrollment where John's like, that's the face that I'm picturing for him going down the hill as a bowling ball. I'm sorry, go ahead. Or maybe the point from the
just go down the hole.
The John Goodman packing tape. Maybe that's the face.
Could be up. Could be up.
You got great faces, John, by the way. Thanks.
So what this guy told me, I was talking to him about his position, and what he told me, he says, you want to know the first thing that we do for women in the clinic? He says, what do you think it is? What do you think the first thing is that we do for these women in the clinic? And I didn't know what the answer was. But I guessed it like some combination of food, education, light movement, right? Like seems to make sense. And he just looks at me and he stops and he pauses for a second. He's like, we take him to get their nails done at the salon. And then he added, and I remember his words, like this was his words. It wasn't even mine. He says, these people aren't stupid. They know they shouldn't be eating 2 large pizzas every night. What we found is that if we help them feel a little bit better about themselves, like they matter, because they do, they change their behaviors without any intervention. And I remember that so clearly because there was one line from that fundamentally changed how I coach, which was when he said, these people aren't stupid. Your clients are not stupid. A coach's job is not to come down from the heavens and amaze their clients with some perfect plan. I don't think that the necessary methodology for the vast majority of our clients is complicated. Think about if you want to write a book. You've got to figure out a way to sit in a chair and write. It's not always going to be pretty. It wasn't pretty for me this morning. It was 6 a.m. I was tired. I was outside on a cold deck, sitting on an uncomfortable wooden chair that was flattening my ass with a hood, sipping lukewarm coffee. And I didn't sleep well last night. And every single part of me wanted to climb back into bed with my beautiful wife and just enjoy it. One of those like glorious, like half awake, half asleep snuggles before our kids woke up. But I got my ass up and I wrote, because I know that writing is no different than losing weight, than fitness, than anything else. You have to show up and you have to do the work. And I know that if all I do is I write 500 words in a day, in 100 days, I'm going to have a 50,000 word book. And that's going to take me 3 to 4 months. And I know that if I plug away day by day, I know that if you chip away at it one day at a time, the book is going to be done. When you think about weight loss, there's a lot of carryovers. If you want to lose weight, really simplified, you need to eat less and you need to move more. I mean, we can get fancier with that, and marketers will try to get fancier with that. But a calorie is a unit of energy. It's literally it. There's some exceptions where hormones interfere in the process, 100%. I wouldn't downplay that. But for the most part, weight loss is an energy balance equation. If you burn more energy than you consume, you will lose weight. Don't come at me and say, oh, but what about the ketogenic diet? What about the fucking, I don't know, what's the one where you don't eat for a while and then you eat a lot in a short period of time and then you don't eat for a while? Intermittent fasting. What about all of these things where it's like all of them work because when you follow a diet, unconsciously, you are restricting calories for a combination of reasons. One is if you follow a diet that eliminates a macronutrient, be it fats, be it carbohydrates. Well, when you eliminate a macronutrient, you eliminate 1/3 of all foods. And so you almost always eat less as a result. When you intermittent fast, you don't eat for most of the time, which means you don't eat as many total calories, which means that you lose weight from not eating as many calories. In addition, when you are on a diet, when you quote unquote define yourself as being on a diet, well, what also happens is you start paying attention to what you eat. And when you start paying attention to something, you start to manage it naturally without even thinking about it. So anyway, that's my rant on diets and buying diets and stuff like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with them, but I don't think there's anything particularly special about any of them independently. The reason why they're so confusing is because they all work and none of them work. And that's kind of why marketers have a field day with them. And so maybe I'm oversimplifying, I don't know, those two examples. But also, really, am I? If you distill down those problems of writing a book, of losing weight, most everything beyond what I said is kind of just surrounding noise that, especially in the initial phases, is nothing but a distraction. And that's maybe a bold statement, but I feel like I've got a fair amount of experience in both of those departments, so I'm okay making a bold statement. And so the guiding principle to all of this, of course, is to ask, how would this look like if it were simple? Now, that's a little bit different from what I used to say, and I've changed that a little bit as I've written this book. I've kind of refined it. You know, in the Online Trainer Academy, one of the golden rules is, how would this look like if it were easy? I actually don't think that that's quite right anymore. If I could go back and edit that textbook, which I'm not going to do because it's a hard thing to do, because textbooks are hard and I don't even want to touch that thing ever again. But if I could go back and edit that thing, I would edit that line to say, how would this look like if it were simple? And then do it the simple way. Because it's not easy. It's not easy to do these things. It's simple. Figuring out what to do is rarely hard, but actually doing it for long enough for it to make any difference is what's hard. And so the job of all of this is to put the pieces of Life Tetris in place for a client in a way that works for them and to help them navigate the peaks and valleys of that journey, right? Writing a book is simple. It's not easy. Waking up at 5 a.m. after a bad sleep because you have 2 young kids and one of them's going through a phase where he's having night terrors about monsters, secretly doubting yourself because the section you have to write is about some crazy, weird Life Tetris concept that you believe is super important, but it's also kind of counterintuitive to prevailing wisdom, because what it's saying is that what coaches think is important to their coaching actually isn't that important to their coaching. And you know you're going to struggle to figure out a way to communicate it, but need to think of some stories and examples so it makes sense to people you've never met before. Is at its core simple. You got to type away at them keys, but it's definitely not easy. And so all of this to say, before we have a bit of a chat about the general philosophy of the Life Tetris idea, and then dive into a very specific example where I'll demonstrate it, is that it's often not what we know. It's helping clients fit in what they already need to know into their already busy life. And it's empowering them to take action on the information that they know they already have. I think a coach's job primarily is to play Life Tetris. I think that coaches rarely need to build the blocks. I think instead they need to work with their clients to arrange them through some combination of prioritization and organization. Mm-hmm. And this is also why, by the way, it's a mistake for clients to wait until they have more free time to start with a coach.
Right.
Because if they do that, when they get busy again, they're going to stop. So as a result, the best time for them to start is actually when they're busy. Because one of the main things that coaches do, fitness coach, business coach, whatever it is coaches are they help clients fit it in when the times are tough, which means that they're going to stick with it through the long haul. Ultimately, your job as a coach is to provide direction, support, accountability. It's to be their guide, but it's to let them steer their own ship as much as possible. And so your job then, if you follow this conversation, and of course, I wrote this, as you can tell, over multiple periods of being very tired and very frustrated at how tired I was writing it at 6 a.m, hence how that seeped into my writing. Your job is to help point them in the right direction, but ultimately it's to give them ownership over their own change. And when you do that, you'll be amazed at how little intervention it actually takes from you for them to make meaningful change. Really, what this all comes down to is that same line my friend said to me all those years back: your clients aren't stupid. They just need a little support. Life Tetris. Amber, what do you think?
So I think, a lot of what we're supposed to be doing is skill building, right? And so that's a lot of what we're doing with clients, isn't teaching them about, how far to squat or, all of these different cues, which are great and all, but it's skill building and problem solving, right? And so that, above anything else, is what we're actually doing with them.
Problem solving. I like that.
Me too.
Because that's what it is, isn't it? I mean, it's a problem where you have the solutions in front of you. They're just fuzzy or they're jumbled. It's
not a lack of information, right? They have all of the information at their fingertips, but how do I apply it? Right. So there's, I had mentioned this a long time ago, but there's a difference between the science of what we do, and then there's the art of the application. And so that's the hard part. And that's going to be individual to every single client. Right. And so that's what we have to do, is look at their life situation and know, like, if someone was working with me, right, like my schedule is different every single day. Right. So a program that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday would never, ever work. Right. So no matter what you build for me, I'm going to fail because there's just no effing way. And so teaching me, if they were working with me, teaching me the skills, how to adjust, would be what their value is, not the program itself.
So how would they approach that? I mean, if you were to hire a coach, how would you bring that up to the coach? Or how would you want the coach to bridge that conversation with you so that you could bring it up to them? That might be more useful.
So in a situation like that, it would be figuring out kind of the minimum viable options, right? So on my shittiest day, when I'm at my most sleep deprived, where can I feel like I can show up at? And how do I alleviate the guilt of what I have to give up in order to do that thing, right? Because that time has to come from somewhere. It has to either come from family time, work, or, wherever, right? And so trying to
not work.
I'm saying that would be the conversation, right? So that would be how to figure it out.
It's like when asking for a leave of absence to go to Disney World next week. It's like, no, you're.
Well, let's be serious.
Leave. I spoke to our HR department. Your leave of absence has been unfortunately declined.
Yeah.
John said, "You get a birthday next year. Why is this so important?"
Are you going with your lady friend?
I will not divulge any knowledge.
Damn it.
Nice try.
You or the subsidiaries of the PTDC. I was like, you get another birthday the year after that. Why you got to go somewhere for this one?
Well, how old are you turning?
49, man. That's
bullshit. No, that's bullshit. That's bullshit.
It's like
you don't get to celebrate it.
It's like a golden birthday because I turned 49 on 4/9. So I got to celebrate big, man. There's some numerology shit going on or something. Yeah.
That's a made up thing. No, here's the thing with birthdays. Okay. You get all your birthdays until you're 16. And then you get the 10s and the 5s.
Right.
Until you're 70.
49 would be the least.
Then when you're 70 again.
70 again.
You have earned the right for people to give a shit about your birthday every single year.
70, you're like 140? Jesus.
49? What a random
it's the least significant for sure, because 50 is probably the last somewhat youthful big one. You know what I mean? So 49 renders itself insignificant just in comparison to 50. It just doesn't make sense to celebrate it. Yet
all of this having been said, I'm looking forward to seeing you next week on the podcast. Your leave of absence has been denied.
That's John's way of saying, please don't leave me alone with Amber.
I hope she's not feeling stabby that day, bro.
Right.
Oh my God.
Amber's good luck to you.
Stabby towards me. So what you know what I liked about what you said, Amber? Going back to what you said, one of the things that I really loved about that is there was some motivational interviewing in there that I think coaches can pull from this, which is go to the far extreme end of it. Say, on your worst day, the world is ending. Your kid missed the toilet with their poop. You're whatever, just the craziest things you can possibly imagine. Let's talk about that day. Because then you're figuring out, then you're taking it to such an extreme that it almost doesn't feel real, which allows you to actually attack the problem in a way that will work and in a way that is less emotional and perhaps more objective. But also, now you're really dealing with the worst kind of day. And if you figure that out, any other kind of day is going to be a little bit better. So I like that a lot, Amber, that you brought that up. That was really useful. The reason that I called on you first, by the way, there, is because I got together with Anthony today. Shout out Anthony. He's been in Sayulita for 5 weeks, and he just sent me a message now. He's like, yeah, man, I took OTA, I listened to all your podcasts. He's like, yeah, it was a bit of stage fright, but I'm leaving in a couple of days, so I wanted to reach out to you. I was like, why the hell did you reach out to me sooner? Anyway, so we hung out, we went for a long walk, and he loves the podcast and he listens to it all the time, which, by the way, we were in the top 2% of all podcasts, which is a stat that means absolutely nothing to anybody, because probably anybody who has an active podcast is in the top 2% of podcasts, because probably about 98% of podcasts just fail after 8 episodes. Anyway, we're in the top 2% of podcasts, everybody. So that's a big deal. But Anthony, one of the things that he mentioned was how much he loves your contributions, Amber, and how much he wishes that he could hear from you more. And so,
hi, Anthony.
Yeah. Does he operate any heavy equipment? Because if so, they're probably getting married soon. He's like a tank driver. Construction. You just drive like a Voltron robot or anything like that.
He's here with his girl. No, he's here with his girl. So
he probably drives a modest vehicle.
But it's kind of cool. I mean, he decided on January 1st, what was it, 2021, before the COVID shutdowns happened. He decided on that New Year's that he wanted to travel. Him and his girlfriend really wanted to travel and set up, and he set a plan and he bought OTA and he attacked it. And he's been traveling for basically 2 years straight. So he's been here for 6 weeks. He did 3 months in Southeast Asia. Their apartment back at home, they're still renting out. He's going East Coast for 3 months. He's been all over the world. So it's been really cool. And they work like regular work hours during the week. They just do it in different places, and then the weekends go and explore. So it was cool to meet him and hang out. So yeah, shout out Anthony. Anything you want to add to this, Richard? When? Anything you want to add to this?
Yeah, I did want to add something. I think it's great coaching, what Amber just said, particularly about on your worst day, right? That's just good quality coaching, because when people enter into a change process, they enter into it through a state of euphoria. We talk about all the dopamine and et cetera involved in deciding to finally do something. And because of that, people only view it through the lens of the best case scenario, which is why I think initially they'll quit early when anything other than the best case scenario happens. So to immediately point a new person towards what's the worst of it look like and how can we make plans for that, I think it's just quality coaching to open up their eyes to the reality of the process, instead of coming in with this sort of utopian ideology about what changing for the better is like. It's not like getting your angel wings or so. It's not how it works. It sucks mostly.
It's almost like you're reading this book ahead of me, because I talk about that exact thing.
Well, I'm also
about about how, well, I mean, I'll get into it actually in this example that I'm going to give.
Yeah.
About how it is important to let clients make the plan, but you also have to be careful because clients will often make too aggressive of a plan. And your job often is to reel them back and let them see the entire plan so they know where things are going, but at the same time, break it down into manageable chunks and organize it and prioritize it. But to make sure that they see that and they can visualize that versus just them not knowing kind of what you're doing. So yeah, it's almost like uni, which by the way, I didn't tell you guys, I finished the service, the client care section of the book.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Nice.
Yeah. So the only section left is scaling. And I'm not at all concerned about writing that. I'll write that pretty quick for no other reason than I just know that stuff like the back of my hand. I mean, that's probably out of not even like marketing, like client generation, like scaling businesses and scaling coaching businesses stuff. I can rattle off, boom, boom, boom. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, client care is done. Okay. So the title of the section, the title of this topic is how to get your client to do what they need to do. And I went through a lot of titles of this section. I don't know whether this will be the final one, but I like it. And I was very careful with the words with it because it's not how to get your client to do what they want to do. It's not how to get your client to do what you want them to do. It's how to get your client to do what they need to do. And so I was very careful with the words. So I'm very happy with how this came out. Basically, nobody cares about any of this, but this is the kind of shit that I struggle with at 6 a.m. when I'm sitting on that hard ass chair.
No, it's
drinking
important.
Lukewarm coffee, wishing that I was still in bed with my wife. Okay.
It's an important distinction, though. I mean, those words are important the way you list them out, because most coaches fall into the get the client to do what I want the client to do as a coach. That's where all the conflict happens. That's an important description, I think.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. So I've never written a meal plan. I've never calculated macronutrient requirements. And I've never restricted any foods my clients could eat. Despite all of this, I'm proud to say that in my personal training career, I helped hundreds of clients lose thousands of pounds and improve their relationships with their food. And so you might ask, how did you do that, John? Well, conveniently, that's what I'm going to tell you. Coaching can feel like an uphill battle sometimes. You know what a client needs to do. Your clients probably know what they need to do. Yet when the results don't meet expectations and after a frank discussion, the reason's obvious, they're not following your advice. And I believe in radical ownership. If they're not following the plan, it's your own fault. You're the coach. That's the job. Now, the most common reason why clients don't follow plans is simple. They didn't make the plan. You made the plan. So he's passed away now, actually, as I was researching him for this section of the book. Allison just sent me a picture. She just got her first tattoo all down her spine. She just sent me a picture of it. Yeah, I'm gonna react in real time as I look at the picture. Holy crap, that's a tattoo down her back. Holy shit, look at that.
Hey, now let's focus. Let's focus.
Pipe down, big fella.
That's super cool.
Pipe down.
It's on her back. Come on now. So I was researching Dr. Albert Bandura, who's a Canadian, but he was a psychologist at Stanford University, and he kind of pushed forward a lot of the research on self-efficacy. So if you're not familiar with his work, super, super valuable work. I wrote about him in Ignite the Fire. It's not the first time that I've looked at his work, but he did pass away in 2021, which is sad. But he was also 95 years old and lived a good life. Anyway, here's one of the things that he said about self-efficacy. He said, by determining the beliefs a person holds regarding their power to affect situations, self-efficacy strongly influences both the power a person actually has to face challenges competently and the choices a person is most likely to make. Basically, let your client dictate their plan. Not only are your clients not stupid, but they want a challenge. And if it's their plan, they'll view it as following a challenge, or they'll view following it as a challenge to overcome. Now, on the other hand, if you dictate to them what they need to do, they're often going to view that as a threat, not a challenge, and retreat away from it. The actual tasks, here's the most interesting part about all of this. The plan, the actual tasks inside the plan could be the exact same in both scenarios. The scenarios being they built it versus you built it. The only difference is how your client views the tasks. One's a challenge, the other is a threat. As a result, one gets done, the other doesn't get done. So in order to help my clients lose weight, what I did is I first gathered their Life Tetris blocks by having them fill out a food log. Food logs, I don't know why more people don't talk about food logs. They're just super, super useful. The instructions are simple. 3 identical pages that basically just say breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks with a space to write down what you ate. So I gave them 3 identical pages. I asked them to write in exactly what they ate and drank on 2 weekdays and 1 weekend. And that's important. So 3 days is generally what the research shows is like all you need. More isn't necessarily better. It's not worse, but 3 days. But at least 1 weekend day is important because weekend days often have different patterns than during the week. So I asked them to write exactly what they ate and drank on 2 weekdays and 1 weekend day with the times that they ate those things. And then I told them, and this is just me, you might be different. I told them not to worry about measuring anything, but to self-assess whether it was a small, medium, or large portion. And I know certain foods, and I'll get to this in a second. I know certain foods might be really calorie dense. So even a small portion for the client might be like a calorie bomb, like a nut butter or something, for example. So, you know, even if they said small and it was like oil on a salad or something. Okay, a little bit of a story. 2016, I boarded a small regional flight from Nosara to San Jose in Costa Rica. The plane fit 12 passengers. One of the passengers rode at the front of the plane with the pilot. Update to this, it was the sketchiest flight I've ever taken. The airline was called Nature Air. You can look it up. And Nature Air was grounded a year or two later by the Costa Rican government because so many planes crashed and killed people. Okay.
Oh,
Complete aside, scary as all hell. And when invitation to travel with me is still on the table.
Yeah, I'll be at Disney.
Yesterday we went on a hike and we got with Calvin and Allison, and we got out of the hike and we were in the middle of nowhere in Mexico. And we were far away from everything, and we ended up jumping on the back of some guy's truck, and Calvin's standing up and he's like, "We're going really fast, right? This is really dangerous, right?" Like, my 5-year-old all the right things. And then they dropped us off in some random town and we had to figure out how to get home. Yeah, it was fun. Okay. So in order to balance the plane, the pilot of this plane in Costa Rica needed the passengers' weights. And so that's just common with small planes. You need to balance the weight of the plane. So we needed the weights of the different passengers. So when we got to the regional jungle airport, the sole employee had a scale, not just for luggage, but also for the passengers. And what he did was brilliant. He hid the number on the scale from the passenger. So we were actually the last to check in on the flight because Calvin, who was 1.5 at the time, had a poop explosion. And the pilot yelled at us to hurry up. And we told him that he didn't want us on the plane in the current condition. It was just not a good experience. And then our stroller didn't fit underneath the plane because it was so small and it was a really expensive stroller. And they told us they'd send it and they never sent it. And we just stopped. We just gave up following up. So some flight attendant in Costa Rica owns our stroller now, I guess. It's like a $700 stroller. It's one of those Thule things. But so of course I'm sitting there and we're changing this poopy diaper in the jungle heat. And I saw the other passengers stepping on the scale when they were checking in. And I didn't think anything of it. Like they all lined up, they stepped on, the employee wrote something down, then they left. It was like inefficient process. When it was my turn though, I was like, oh, look at the scale. It's been a while since I weighed myself. I've been here for a while. And so I stepped up and I looked down and the number was blocked from my view. And so I asked the employee if it was on purpose. And he said it was. And he said to me, we have to board these flights quickly. When people used to see their weight, they always wanted to have a conversation about it. It slowed down the process and delayed the flights.
That is amazing.
That's awesome.
And so the first thing that I thought was brilliant design thinking, tiny airline company in Costa Rica.
They did something right. Maybe not flying the plane, but
yeah, maybe you could stop flying into fucking mountains, but like brilliant design thinking. But second, what the employee was doing was simple and objective data collection. They needed your weight to balance an airplane. How much you weighed only mattered in as much as the pilot needed to be able to tell you where to sit. When you're doing food logs, remove all judgment and just collect the data. If they feel like you're going to judge their choices, they're going to feel an urge to lie, likely through omission of some foods. They need from day one to trust that you're your partner in this, and partners don't judge, they support, right? So the best plan for them is a plan that works within their unique life. Realistic insight into their existing food intake, their eating patterns is paramount to their success. Make sure that they know that all you're doing is unemotional and objective data collection. You don't comment on anything. What would you say if they say, I can't believe that I ate that cookie? What would you say to them?
Get on the damn plane. I don't know.
Tell them the story.
Yeah, I say this up front, so I never get it on the back end.
So what do you say? What do you say?
And the interesting thing is, here's what I say. I say, hey, I need a 3-day food log. Just to collect data. I am in no way judging what it is that you're doing. So please don't be like my aunt who has a lovely housekeeper that comes on Wednesday. You know what my aunt does on Tuesday? And they'll say, she cleans the house, doesn't she? I said, she sure does. And that's not necessary. I said, so for me to be a good detective, I need you not to erase all the clues. Can you do that for me? And they'll say, yeah. And then they'll just send me the food log. And that's what I say every single time.
When's aunt's house cleaning story? Get from podcast to include. Got it.
I feel like every time I make a good suggestion, I feel like American Idol, and you tell me I'm going to Hollywood because you're going to be referencing the book. It's very celebratory for me. Like it feels
That's
awesome.
Great. You're so damn good at this stuff. Like these little things, where, I mean, I had to write like 1,000 words and some nonsensical story about my kid shitting himself in like a tiny airport in Costa Rica to get to the same point that you're like, no, of course that's an issue. I just get in front of it, man.
But can we be honest? Just because I fucked it all up for 2 years before there was even an OTA. Like for the listeners out there that don't know, quick interjection here. I was doing online training for 2 years before I ever met John. The Online Trainer Academy was 2 years almost to the day after I started online training. So it was beautiful for me, more so than anybody else, because I had already messed everything up. I had struggled through every possible conceivable mistake you can make in online training. And then this guy shows up and hey, I got a book for that. So I know a lot of stuff because I struggled longer than most people did, honestly.
So I didn't have an aunt story, and I've also never called them aunts because I'm not from the South. I call them aunts, which I think aunt makes more sense because there's a U. But also, as I'm teaching my son English and reading, I realize how little sense English makes. And like, can you imagine? I feel like if I had to learn English, and I was like from another place, and I got to the point where I was learning about the word yacht, I would just give up and walk away.
It's a stupid language.
Throw the book at my professor.
We steal too much from everybody else and make up our own shit as we go.
YACHT?
It's stupid.
What the hell?
Yacht.
It's a stupid language.
Yacht. So,
there and there alone is problematic enough to make me quit learning English. It's just stupid. I'm sorry, John. Go ahead.
Well, so I liked your aunt cleaning story. So I didn't have a story like that. All that I told my clients was, look, I'm not even going to look at this until we're together. I just want you to know that. Like, you'll bring them into me over the course of the next week, and I'm going to put them in a drawer and I won't even look at it. until all three are done and work together. That's what I would tell them. So it gets to the point where we're looking at them together, right? And I'd sit in an office with them, and we'd sit across from one another in like a closed office with a closed door. And I'd lay out the logs in front of them. And without even looking at them, I still haven't even looked at these things. I would just look at my client and I would say, what do you want to change? And they'd say something, and I'd find it on one of their logs. They might point at it, or I'd find it, and I'd circle it. And I had another piece of paper, and it would be my plan, right? It would be written, not your plan, not Jonathan Goodman's client's plan. It would be called my plan. And I'd write down what that was. So I'd circle it on their log, and I'd write it down on that other piece of paper. And then I would look at them and I'd say, anything else? And they'd say it, and I'd follow the process. And we'd continue this process until they told me there was nothing else. And so number one, I've always thought that it was really important to have that piece of paper, like paper and pen in front of us that both of us can see. It was pretty rare that there was something glaring in their logs that they didn't identify. And if there was something really big, I might call it out. But if there was something where I'm like, I kind of probably have called that out myself, but like, it's not really that big of a deal, I would usually leave it. Like, we could tackle that later, probably. Unless it was like the biggest thing that was going to make the biggest impact, I would usually leave it. And so by showing them the page they filled out, circling the stuff they told me to circle, they now know where this whole thing's going. And there's a certain kind of comfort in those results, right? At the start, you need permission to work on one small thing at a time. And the way to get that permission is to show them that you're eventually going to work on all the things. And so that's where having it all written out really, really makes sense. Okay, cool. So then I'd look over all the logs. And again, I'd look if anything was glaring. Clients aren't stupid. It's rare that anything would be. The only common one that I would sometimes find is foods that are deceivingly high in calories. Things like nuts, oils, or like medium hot mocha frappe lattes with light foam made, but they'd usually order it with almond milk because they want to be healthy from Starbucks. And so the only time really that I can remember where like I went back and I was like, hey, how about this thing? It was some of those foods that were deceivingly high in calories that they might not have known were quite as high in calories as they were. Anyway, if necessary, I'd ask them if it was okay to add something to their list, right? They'd say yes. And then I'd say, okay, great choices. I agree. All right. So what do you want to tackle first? And then I'd usually like shake their page. I'd like rustle the page for effect as I was saying that. And they'd say something. And even if I didn't agree whether it was like the number one priority, it was usually like 1, 2, or 3. It was almost always a good enough choice. And so I'd circle it and I'd put a number 1 beside it on their sheet. And I'd say, awesome. So what's your strategy? Like I haven't told them anything at this point. And then usually now is when they try to do too much too quick. So especially early on in coaching, to your point, when you mentioned this before, which you didn't even know that I was going to mention this. So, we'll have the same mind on this. Clients are very super motivated early on in their coaching. They want to do it all. And you kind of need to like wheel them back a lot of the time and make it realistic. And so there's a story. I think I've told this before in some places, but I changed her name. But there was my old client. Her name was Tiffany. Used to stop at Starbucks on her way to work every single day, and she would buy it was like an 800 calorie sugar and caffeine bomb, like drink. It was one of these fucking whipped cream, grande, mocha, frappe. Like you're standing behind these people, and you're like, how did you even come to that order? There's like 20, and the barista guy behind the desk is like, yep, like this is normal. It's like, no, man, this shit ain't normal. And so what she would do is she would, on her way to work every single day, Monday to Friday, she would stop and get one of these drinks. And then on Sundays, she'd go out with her girlfriends and she'd get one of the drinks. So for context, I mean, you probably all know this listening to this, but there's 3,500 calories in a pound of body fat. And so Tiffany drank an 800 calorie drink 6 days a week, Monday to Friday and Sunday, which is 4,800 calories. So when I saw her logs and I told her this, we just calculated it, basically what I just did here. She told me that she wanted to go cold turkey and just cut out all the drinks. And I stopped her. Because I didn't have the Life Tetris analogy at that point, but I knew that the best plan had to be realistic for the client. And it's not so much a matter of removing blocks as it is just prioritizing them and rearranging them. Mm-hmm. And so in Tiffany's case, her daily commute included a routine of stopping at Starbucks. Interrupting that routine, I thought at the time was pretty dangerous. And then she looked forward to Sunday mornings with her girlfriends. So when she told me that she wanted to eliminate all of the drinks, I pushed back a bit with the question. And I just asked her, I said, is there any time where you really, really, really look forward to those drinks? And she said, yeah, Sundays. Okay. So Tiffany didn't change her daily commute Monday to Friday, but instead of a mocha crepe fratte latte calorie caffeine bomb, she bought a black coffee. So she still had the same routine, right? She just switched it for a black coffee. Then on Sundays, she still enjoyed her drink with her girlfriends. And as a result, she had 4,000 less calories weekly, which means that in a single month with no other intervention, removing that one drink during the week, replacing it with black coffee, led to a loss of 4.5 pounds of body fat. Right? That's Life Tetris. It's not counting anything. It's identifying the big rocks. And each change you help a client make are kind of like levers. Each one's meaningful, but together they add up. You can't work on all of them at once. You got to let the client take the lead. You got to make the plan their plan and then work with them and support them step by step to just rearrange the pieces. Life Tetris.
What I like about that example that you gave is often clients will identify something to change, but not realize that that change requires several other changes. Right. And so it wouldn't just be the change of stopping the drink. It's changing the drive. It's passing the Starbucks. Right. And so the amount of energy it takes for each change gets harder and harder. And especially first thing in the morning. So it's not just that she had to give that up. She had to change her route to work. She had to change when she went to work. She had to change, all of these other kind of micro decisions that she had to make in order to change that one thing. And so part of our job is to help them understand that if they choose this change, there's this domino effect that they have to account for that may make what seems like an easy change something actually wildly uncomfortable that will ruin their ability to continue that.
The domino effect of change. TK.
I like that. When she went black, she never went back.
What? When let's move on.
She's got that BBC, that big black coffee, and it say change your life, John. I think you dig what I'm dropping, baby.
I need someone to trademark that as a coffee. We have a bakery that's called BBC.
How has nobody done that?
That's not trademarked. Oh my god!
How has nobody done that?
Some mom and pop shop needs to get on that. That's just too funny to not ask for in a coffee shop.
Yes,
too funny. I love it. This is a good story, John.
I don't think I could do it I would just like I decided I wanted a black co-host for a podcast so I could talk about black stuff. I think I might decide to start a coffee shop with black person just so I can sell BBC.
I love to say, Tiffany, your BBC is ready. Tiffany, your BBC is hot and at the counter. I love to say that. I'd be there. I work there as a barista. That's just too much joy every day.
Just if it's a little bit too hot, just blow on it for a little
right. I could say so much. I'm restraining myself.
Exactly.
No,
like, should I say it? No, we're good.
No, I'm not even good.
No, do you want this warm, lukewarm, or piping?
I'm just not going to say anything. That's what I'm going to do. How about that? How about them apples, John?
This is killing me.
I'm gonna let the listener drift off into their own information and imagine what I might say.
Can we request for people to tag us in whatever, like, what do you want to call this? Like, to continue
whenever you get a coffee, if you get a coffee that is just a black coffee, please tag Amber, Len, and I on Instagram with the hashtag BBC.
And any jokes that come with it. That would be great. Let's just get a list of them.
That'd be wonderful. I look forward to your tags.
I'd be happy to read those. If any jokes come in, I'd be more than happy to slow jam any of them on a future episode of this podcast. If they come in. Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
This is like the celebrities who read the mean tweets.
Yes.
But
yeah, those are great.
I'm ready to do that. John, this is a good episode. Is the episode over? This is a good episode.
I think we got to end the episode.
This is
like
good.
we can talk about more like coaching stuff, but I mean, once you get it,
BBC coffees.
Once you get to BBC coffees, I think
the episode's over.
I mean, you don't want to fall off the edge of the peak. We're at the peak.
Yeah, all the punctuation you need.
Can you just delay for like a second while I choose another episode to recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. Because at BBC, it's like a long exclamation point with 2 dots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
So you're done once you get to that punctuation. You know what I'm saying?
At the bakery that we have here, that's called BBC Bakery. They also have things like something about handcrafted sausage.
Hold on. You do have a BBC bakery?
Yeah, we do. We have a BBC bakery, and like on the menu,
what's it stand
says Buford Bread Company.
No, that sucks.
Yeah. Okay. But on their menu, they have something about like artisanal handcrafted sausage. It tastes great in your mouth. And all of these like jokes in there. And I commented once, I'm like, this is amazing and hysterical. And they're like, wait, what do you mean? They had no idea what they had done. It was funny. No, it was
Sweet
all
Jesus.
on accident. And it was like, oh, bless your heart.
They're like, why is there a lineup around the block of all these people buying this and posting it on Instagram? This is amazing. The best thing ever. Our sausages must taste really good. It's like, no, you just stumbled on the best marketing hack ever.
Make made it dirty.
Big penis.
Yes.
Where else would it taste good other than your mouth?
About this before. Yeah,
it tastes good in your mouth. Do you need to say mouth when you say something tastes good? Like where else would it taste good inside of you? That doesn't make any sense.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Obvious Choice podcast. I wanted to recommend another episode to you if you are looking for something right now. Episode 33, this is called The Other Side of Inspirational Stories. This episode was actually one of my favorites that we did. Talks about inversion, talks about the things you don't see, gives the example of speakers talking about what they're doing on stage. And then you realize that none of them have children. And so their advice is not necessarily bad advice. But if you have children and they don't have children, their advice might not be appropriate advice to you. Or if nothing else, it's a pretty important data point. And there's lots of examples of this where when you invert stories or when you look for the information that isn't there, you start to recognize that there's more to the story. And so The Other Side of Inspirational Stories, episode 33, one of my favorite ones. It's not one of these like super highly tactical ones. It's one of the ones where I hope it's going to get you to perhaps see the world and business and other folks who are trying to teach you and even us a little bit better and figure out how to use that information better. And as always, actually, no, don't take a picture of this podcast and screenshot and tag us. Instead, take a picture of your black coffee, hashtag BBC, tag Ren, Amber, and I, and make the best joke you can, or don't even make a joke. Just send it to us. And
I'm so excited.
We'll make it funny.
Yeah, we'll make it funny. And if you're a polyamorous vegan from California, you're not going to be involved in this because you don't drink black coffee. You are Tiffany. You are the person who we are aiming the mocha frappe latte comments towards. And I hope that you enjoy your $14 800 calorie caffeine bomb from Starbucks. Enjoy your grande on me. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.